Every so often, I get people asking me, like, yo, where do I find deck lists for Zero that aren't just, random content creators making random videos, aka my videos? And well, there's a lot of events that happen for Zero. There's a lot of competitive events, but a lot of the big Japanese players, they don't really share their deck lists on Twitter that much unless you specifically ask them for it, and then they tend to if you do. But every 3 months we do have the Zero Championships, and we actually do get the deck list of the top 16 every single time for like all 3 lists of every single player. And these lists are actually like pretty representative of what the players actually use in ladder and stuff. So I thought, you know what, I haven't really covered this before, but at least so that the information is out there, I want to look at this time's, the Vanguard Zero Championship 2021 summer. I want to take a look at the deck list used by the top 16 players here and kind of like navigate through the website so you guys can see what actually goes on there. And so when you guys in Global go to set 21 in a couple months, you will also be able to use these lists if you want to try them out yourselves, or if you play JP, then just try them out right now. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so here we are on the finalists page. So you can see here we have the top 16 players. It doesn't show them in order because this site is used to check their deck list mid-event, so they don't actually rank them or anything. But you can basically go through all the deck lists of the players themselves, and on top of that you can see here there's the event tab at the top. If you go to that, you can check some of the other events, and sometimes when there's qualifiers and stuff, they also show the top list of those events too. So there's actually quite a few resources that you can find just on the official website, in Japanese of course, but it's still something. So let's take a look at what we actually have here from these players, because I'm personally quite interested to take a look and talk about these. So the first player we have is Ren, and so he actually, they showed the achievements that they have. So here you can see in the August, I think this was one of the Bluish Flame ones, he was first in the ranked fight season, and then he was top 10 in ranked ladder 7 times. But that's basically his only achievement, so no tournament wins. But you can see the deck list that they brought. We can actually zoom into this a little bit more so you guys can see a bit better. So we see basically, I think this was the tried and tested best 3 decks to bring, to be honest, because you can see here we have the brawler list, basically running a bunch of power-up cards and a few tech grade one-ofs for grade 2s. The grade 1 slots are very universal throughout all the brawler lists, and then for grade 3s, I mean, he ran 1 Vermilion instead of 1 Unlocker, but that's pretty common. We have Revengers. You guys in Global are very familiar with this deck right now, I think. So this is basically pretty much the standard version. This 2-off slot is either the main or Tartu or something, and then I think the grade 3s are pretty universal too. And then Perditions basically running the Overlord variant with 1 Blockade and 1 Dauntless, which is pretty interesting. And on top of that runs 3 Burnouts, which is also you don't see it that often, so pretty cool list. And overall you can see all the decks that they used. Then Dotto, this is a fan favorite. A lot of people know Dotto and really like him. You can see all his achievements here as well. So you basically see the qualifiers and the first Zero Championship, and then he was in the winter one, and he was in the pre-qualifier, I think. So this was 3rd place, Legion Cup, and just all these kind of all these tournaments that Dotto has been to, hashtag Dottogen. They have a little bit of a introductory phrase and stuff. And here his deck lists are also pretty standard, I would say. So Perditions, this is a very common list. Brawlers once again, and then finally duos, which we see is running basically a mix of the Rito as well as the Pacifica. But then the grade 2s and 1s, we've seen this lineup from JP players quite a lot, where they run a lot of the ditch and draw girl to set up for the Legion and be able to recycle your pieces as well. So pretty good. Dotto's lists are again tried and tested. These are 3 decks that are very common in the current meta. I think he made it top 8 if I'm not mistaken. Then we have Yuzu. Let's see who what kind of decks they actually brought here. So Yuzu here, we can see was 6th in one of the ranked ladder seasons in order to qualify. And then basically here we see Revengers, pretty common with the 1 of crit. I like the little spice there. Brawlers with the 1 unlocker. This looks very similar to my own, actually, if almost the same actually. And then of course Seekers. I think they were one of the only Seeker players that came through to the tournament, but is pretty interesting. Runs a lot of the heavy Soul Blast cards, just because you have this girl who I think is Soul Blast 1 or 2 to draw, and then of course you have a lot of counter charging, a lot of blasters, and just in general it's a Thing Saver build as well. So pretty cool to see Seekers as well. So shout outs to Yuzu there. And we have Yuji. So Yuji here actually brought Bermudas as well. So this one is actually the Nouvelle variant of Perditions, which you don't see too often. Usually you see pure Overlord or pure Perdition and stuff like that, but this one chose to go with the Nouvelle. And then here we see a brawler list that doesn't run any shotgun blow, and instead runs 4 Jin to make those really nice attacks, which if you don't have the power upgrade 2s, that's actually extra good attacker to call down as well, which is quite nice. And then we have the duo list, which is also quite standard, I would say. You know, counterchargers, ditch and draw, and then the Rito as your 4 of, as your basically other like backup grade 3 that you go for as your heal trigger. So we've seen Bermudas also like pretty commonly throughout this meta, and then also you can see here that they basically were also in the Zero Championship 2020. Then we have Shirataki, so this one is going to be, I think, yes, Shadows again. So this is again very common list. We see Revengers running Curse Lancer, which isn't too common actually, so it gives you one less Revenger in the deck, but you get a countercharger, which like you have through Doran, but of course having another one doesn't hurt either, because especially if you want to like aggressively use your Nemains and your BDRs and stuff like that. Then here we have a dauntless version of Perditions. So as I've said, so far we've had like what, the Overlord version, the pure Perdition version, the Nouvelle version, and then the dauntless version. Like there's so many different ways to build Perditions, and like, you know, it's build the great basically as a deck, because it's just very flexible. Like you can really afford to play a bunch of different splashes. The not so flexible list though is Brawlers. We see a lot of the same stuff going on here. This time it's this guy, like Ground Break Dragon or something like that. I can't remember exactly what his name was, but something along those lines. But yeah, so Shirataki here again has already had some achievements you can see over here in previous tournaments. Then we have Nidaime. I think he won the whole thing if I'm not mistaken, but you know, that's definitely very cool. We see again a lineup that we're quite used to here. So this time it's a full-on Pacifica version of duos instead of the Rito. Then we have the Brawler list, which is again very common. Another Dauntless Perdition, so we see that one come up once more as well. We have Aren, a lot of people's beloved. So Aren is both a global and a JP player, and look at this, you know, he is literally like the top of the top. I think he has so many achievements that probably can't even fit anymore, because this man is the dominator. You know, he's also part of Team OG, so the global players definitely know him as well. So yeah, he built I mean, he brought like a pretty standard lineup again of like Perditions with Dauntless this time again, and then we have Revengers, and finally Brawlers. So again, like Perditions are a very tried and tested deck. Brawlers are like kind of like the main meta deck, and then Revengers are basically like your counter to the main meta deck, which is really cool. So again, we see like Swordbreakers and Judge Bows and everything. It's a pretty standardized list. Then we have AZ. I think he finished in top 8 if I'm not mistaken. So here we can see he actually brought quite a fresh lineup. I don't think he didn't make it past top 16, but his lineup is pretty interesting because of course Bermuda is like we've all seen before, but it's a more Pacifica heavy list. But what he brought that was quite exciting is that he brought star-vaders. So star-vaders here running the Worldline engine with the like no actual Glendioses, but the reverse units for the searching, and then he runs Blaster Joker as his main grade 3, and essentially just like 2 Garnets, which is quite surprising. Usually you see 4 Garnet and then less of the reverses, so that's quite cool. Like he doesn't run anything else from the like reverse engine. He runs 2 Blaster Joker searchers, and then apart from that it's pretty standard. A lot of power-up cards too, like the +3Ks when you lock, both in grade 1s and 2s. You don't see that too often in these kind of lists, so that's quite cool to see actually. And he, yeah, Worldline starter is also very nice, and he also plays a witch like variant with Yggdrasil and like Minervas, and like this is a very peculiar list for Genesis. I've never seen this kind of list played before, where it like plays a very heavy like witch lineup with a little bit of regalias. It's quite interesting. You really don't see it that much, but we didn't really get to see it on stream either if I'm not mistaken, so you don't really know the game plan of it either. I'm guessing you just kind of push and farm with the witch engine, and then you basically try to finish with CEO Yggdrasil or maybe Minerva, something like that. Sounds pretty interesting to be honest. But looks like Genesis is his favorite clan, so I don't blame him for bringing that. Then this is Chacha, I believe. So Chacha brought a very tried and tested lineup, but this one with 4 Raging Forms, which a lot of people are saying isn't really worth playing because, of course, like, you know, you already have a really good restand. You want to like have other things in your deck apart from just like restanding Vanguards, you know, like the Cormac. And so he runs Raging Form, which is pretty cool to see. Then we have Brawlers and, of course, Nemuel, once again, a list that we've seen quite a few times. And he actually has some TCG tops too. You can see 2018 WGP V Premium, he actually topped in both years, in both 2018 and 2019. So really cool to see TCG players also, you know, come out on top, which is very exciting, very cool to see. We'll want to see more of that in the future. We have Hisapon. I think he also went quite far. He runs some old PGs, which is quite surprising. Ah yeah, Hisapon played Jewel Knights, right. This was the really exciting part. So he had Nouvelle Perditions, he had duos, but he had Jewel Knights, which actually showed up on stream and was actually quite fun to watch. Essentially, he runs the more like long game focused build that has like a really heavy like Ashley focus, and so basically the game plan is that you want to like use the starter who says when you call a Jewel Knight from your deck, if you have 4 more Jewel Knight rear guards, the called unit gets +3k. So basically when you like call stuff out with Sword Me and stuff, it gets a power up and whatnot. But then also Algaro says when this attack hits a Vanguard, you can soul blast 1 to call a grade 1 Jewel Knight from your deck. So you can call that out and like give it the power up with the starter, and that way you actually get like more power basically across the board. And it's just a nice way to like fight over defensives and stuff, even like not just in the early game but also in the late game, because there like your deck doesn't do as much at that point. So the best you can do really is like, you know, get over defensives, I guess. And it's also nice because, you know, later on if you don't need it, you can lock it with Astray Reverse and stuff like that. So we actually saw quite a few games of the Jewel Knight deck from Hisapon, so pretty cool. I want to mess around with this myself. I play a very different version of Jewel Knights myself, a lot more like early game centered, but this one does seem pretty cool too. I like it quite a lot. Then we have Yuki. So Yuki here sounds like a familiar name, and that's, you know, definitely for a reason, because he's topped quite a few times, and he actually brought Ethics Blau. So this is why I'm making this video, is like honestly because there's a lot of cool lists that, you know, we focus on like the big 3, big 4 lists that are in this meta, but there's stuff like Ethics Blau that still comes out on top. Look at that, 4 ranked ethics. Then he has like, you know, the Blaus. It's a very standard Ethics Blau list, but you can see it's still out here. Like, it's not easy to make top 16. They had to, you know, win it with these decks. You also play Tsukuyomi. We always say Tsukuyomi is still one of the top decks because of the ability to manipulate your deck and like know what's coming at the top stack. And then basically something that's a bit easier to use and a bit more reliable is of course the Revengers. So still congrats to making it top 16, which is really, really cool. Then we have TouchMe. So this is a pretty funny username. Also topped many times, and I'm pretty sure they might have used a different name in the past, because I laughed at TouchMe way more than I should have. And he used the leaders splashed with star-vaders in a very interesting way. So when most people splash deleters with star-vaders, they use like infinite zero, but here he chose to go like pure deleters but with garnets, and then with like photons and palladiums. Like that's basically the splash, and he like split up his PGs too for like, I'm not really sure what reason. For Perditions, he actually runs the Overlord version, which I like quite a lot. One of each art for the Overlord I also really like, honestly. That's very nice little like point, style point. And then here he basically had just Revengers, which were quite the standard list with like 3 domains. But yeah, I like the Perdition list. This is not actually that similar to the one I run. I run Strikens, but the deleter list is pretty cool too. You know, just good to see some kind of representation for the deck. But he's not the only one that brought deleters either. We have Yamekake here as well. And he, damn nice dungaree, he actually has a few achievements, and he brought Brawlers, Perditions once again with Overlord, and 1 Dauntless, and then finally we have duos again. And we see the Burnout come up here in the Perdition lists too. So that's Yamekake. Then we have Battle Dome. Everyone loves Battle Dome. I believe he won the Spring Cup earlier this year, so he managed to actually like qualify once again. And he brought, you know, 2 tried and tested decks, and then finally the OTT, you know, Tsukuyomi as well. You know, we've said it time and time again, this is a very tried and tested deck that works really, really well. Of course, it's not as explosive or bursty as some of the other ones, but it's still very strong. Duos, of course, also, and Brawlers are too, so no surprise there. Then we had Chuggy. No, what was it? Nidaime, I think, came second, and Brutia was the one that won, right? So Chuggy for Team XVR has quite a few tops already as well. We've seen him many times. So he ran the, like, you know, this is basically like the Rangers everyone's seen. He ran the Perditions, which is almost pure. He run like 1 unlocker, which is kind of cool to see as well, and then 2 overlords. So pretty cool way to kind of like, you know, like 2 of this guy as well, the pain laser. So it's a pretty interesting list, but of course the main focus goes here to deleters. This is like pure deleters with the Ditch and Draw grade 1, so he doesn't actually run Palladium, and also like 2 of the Astro Reaper, I believe that's the name of the grade 2 that searches something the same name as your Vanguard. So it's a very pure deleter list with a bit of splash of some other stuff. So this should also give you guys an interesting idea of like how you could build deleters going into this set if you want to. And then Revengers are also very, very standard. You can see what these players are doing with their last grade 3 slots in Revengers too. And finally Brutia, basically in VMC he was the A block winner, so this wasn't, he only has a TCG achievement, which is really cool. You know, again, TCG players playing Zero is always really great, and he ran a really cool list for Perditions, which basically had, you know, 4 of the grade, 4 of the vortex, which is very standard. But then he ran 1 blazing flare, which I really like because you don't use your soul for much in this deck, like virtually nothing, outside of like the countercharger basically. But you definitely have excess soul, especially when the game gets long. So you can use blazing flare for like, you know, just soul blast 3 and like pop something, because it's not bad, you know, burns and intercept. Then the brawler list is very like anti-Link Joker heavy. And then finally we have, oh, this was the spice, the 1-of Raging form. You know, just running this 1-of Raging form just for the sake of essentially like nuking your board to make another one and then just like still have a restand. It's a funny idea. I don't think it's the most consistent, and like, you know, if you ride it on an empty board and like you don't have many ways to gather, like to generate a board, it's not really that great either. But it's a funny idea, so I'll give it credit where credit's due, and he also won the whole thing, so that's a big achievement. So yeah, those are the lists that I wanted to talk about. I just think it's kind of interesting how essentially like we just have a lot of these different deck lists, even for the same archetypes, for all these players. So yeah, that's basically it. If that's all I wanted to show, just wanted to share these deck lists. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check them yourself. Just click on the player names and you'll pop up everything and like you'll be able to look through it. And of course, if you need, you know, names of units, you can always ask people on Discord and places like that. But yeah, so those were the lists. The next time we have one of these, I think will be at the end of fall, so that'll be in November. And so then we'll be well into G as well. Like I think 2 sets of G should be out by then. So it'll be really interesting to see how the meta transforms with the release of G, because I think a lot of us are really excited for that. So yeah, can't wait to see how Zero will change going into the future. But we're in the Legion meta for quite a bit still, and so you should definitely enjoy yourself with some of these decks as well if you can already build them. But anyway, that's going to be it for me today. If you guys like the video, please do leave a like, and also if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel because it does help a lot. But that's going to be it for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.